after I went in, the hallucinations continued on. One time, I looked out of the hospital's window and saw a river of fire coming down the concrete steps of the property next to it. And in the middle of all the fire, there were all these mad dogs, barking and being pushed down the river. Simply horrible. Neither the doctors nor my family knew what I had taken, but somehow the one in charge of me decided to do a detox, and that saved my life. 2 weeks later, I was out of the hospital, and it took me at least 2 years of therapy, without any medication, mind you, with an orthodox Freudian doctor, the same one that had me detoxed, for me to go back to having a normal life. I agree with one of the people that described their experience, that this herb aims to kill, and after regaining consciousness, I heard several stories of people killing themselves after drinking the tea. I guess I was extremely lucky to come out of the experience alive, because I felt that if I died under the effect, that my soul was going to be in the devil's service to act on other people who took the herb. It was more or less like this other guy describes below, that it seems like once you die under the effect of Datura, you belong to an evil group and you can never free yourself again. By the way, my mom said that right after I was put in the hospital, my uncle, the shaman, had a session for me in the middle of the forest and told her that she could rest assured that I would be out of the hospital in no time and that I would be safe after that. The year is now 2000, and I still haven't fully recovered from that experience. Whatever the temptation is, watch out, don't do it. Had it been now, and in America, I would have sued the neurologist who prescribed all those drugs and never had a clue that I was intoxicated. It could have cost my life. The plant alone has claimed many lives, and it hasn't been funny. So please, don't go there. Revisiting this experience is somewhat difficult for me. The few hours I remember are some of the most frightening and potentially deadly I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing. I grew up in a very conservative, wealthy family, and by my early teens I found myself experimenting with pot, mostly out of desperation for my friends. By the time I was 17, I was regularly getting stoned and loving this new world I discovered. I was meeting people and spending times in places that my parents would have died had they ever found out about, and I loved it. I loved the independence, and I loved thinking I knew better. By the time I was about 17, some group of friends that introduced me to pot had started talking about this thing called runnin. Desperate to prove myself to these older, cooler guys, I told them I'd love to try it, and we went on a search throughout the town to hopefully find some growing. We found a plant and took a few pots to one of the guys' homes. I don't remember how much I took that night, but it wasn't much. I remember going home pretty soon after, coaxing myself into thinking I was starting to trip out. I'd never done anything but smoke weed, so I didn't know what this was even supposed to do. The little information they had given me led me to believe it was some kind of hallucinogen. That's literally all I knew about it. After that failed night, a few months had gone by, and I found myself at the local lake with some friends hanging out on the beach. I noticed some gigantic windflower plants growing nearby, and upon closer inspection, I noticed that there were several huge spiny pods growing all around it. I picked 4 or 5 of the biggest ones and headed home. They looked kind of cool, so I lined them on top of the TV in my room and kind of forgot about them. A couple days later, my entire family came down with their wives and children. I'm the youngest. We're a pretty close family, so I spent the day hanging out and just having a good time. Little did I know what was coming that night. It was about 3 in the morning and I was bored with nothing to do. I spent all the time I could on the computer and there was nothing on TV, but I soon remembered the spiny pot sitting on top of my television. I was in a pretty daring mood and I didn't want to have a false start, so I took 2 of the pots upstairs with me and cut them open in the kitchen. I completely emptied out the contents of both pots and poured a glass of my favorite juice, then proceeded to pour the contents into my mouth where I chewed them up to a pulp and swallowed the mush with a few gulps of fruit juice. It's been 6 years since that night, but as I sit here and remember it, I'm actually gagging as I think about it. I sat in the kitchen for a few minutes, then I remember walking downstairs into my bedroom. I sat on the bed waiting for something to happen, and after 10 minutes or so passed, I started thinking it must have been another dud. I set up to walk into the bathroom. As I got up, I noticed a strong sense of dizziness come over me. It's working, I remember thinking. I walked into the bathroom with a really strong urge to urinate. As I stood over the toilet, I noticed that I wouldn't go. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't start to pee. By this time, the effects were almost doubling every minute or so, and the wind was becoming more and more cloudy. I wanted to pee so bad, and I remember that every time I got into hot water, I had a hard time not going. So hey, why not turn on the outside jacuzzi? Genius idea, I thought. I started walking out of the bathroom. As I caught my reflection on the way out, I stopped and stood there staring at myself, not recognizing the person looking back at me. I sat there moving my face around and feeling with my hand as the effects came washing over me faster and faster. I never felt anything like this before, and I was kind of liking it. By this time, I started to teleport around the house. I have absolutely no memory of walking around. I just remember appearing in different rooms. I opened my eyes and I was in my bedroom looking into the mirror, getting more and more confused about who was looking back at me. I teleported to the jacuzzi controls and turned it on. The jacuzzi takes a good 20 minutes to heat up. I just remember suddenly being in my swimsuit and trying to walk outside again to the warm jacuzzi. I remember having the hardest time trying to lift my legs to walk by it. I got to the edge of the jacuzzi, which has about a 1-foot high ledge to step over, and I thought I was lifting my leg high enough to step over the ledge. As I went to take my step, I noticed my foot was only a few inches from the ground. I bent down and lifted my leg up with my hands, and suddenly I was sitting down in the warm water. I was finally able to urinate, and I was just sitting there in a complete daze. This is where I started to pass in and out of consciousness. The best way to explain it is to say it's exactly like when someone holds my neck and passes me out, and I start coming back from it. I get this weird static noise in the background, like on a television that slowly fades away and I'm back to normal again. It was even stranger because the noise of the water and jets mixed in with the static and it all blended together. This is the scariest part. I'll give a brief explanation of the layout of our backyard to better convey the situation. Basically, the pool and jacuzzi sit about 25 feet away from the house, and the house faces a steep drop-off that looks out over the city. There's homes on both sides of ours that are separated by a high brick wall. I was situated in a way that I was facing the house with my back to the drop-off and able to see the brick wall to our neighbor's house to my far right, about 50 feet away. Remember, this is now about 3:30 to 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's pitch dark. I remember looking over at the wall and seeing a dark figure appear. It was more of a black shadow than a person. It slid up over the wall and started crawling over at me. The moment the first figure started over the wall, it was followed by 3 others that looked exactly like it. I followed them with my eyes as they slid up and over the yard until they slipped into the water in front of me. Then darkness, static. I can't see anything, but I can hear the static getting louder and louder. It's building up more and more until it morphs into the sound of the jacuzzi jets. I look up, and the figures are gone. Darkness again. The beings are back. I'm talking to them, but I don't remember what about. Now, the static is building up again until it morphs into the jets. I look back up, and they're gone. Darkness swallows me again, and the beings are back. Then suddenly, I come back to, I'm in the house, standing in the downstairs living room, dripping wet. I start walking to my bedroom, and I notice the light is turned on. I didn't leave it turned on, I think to myself. I walk in, and to my absolute horror, my entire family is there. They're all staring at me with looks of disgust and surprise. My dad approaches me and in a commanding voice says, "What are you on?" I desperately try to answer, "Nothing." My mouth won't work. I finally get something close to nothing out, and he answers back, "You're slurring your words so badly I can't even understand you. Now tell me what you're on." I scream back, "Nothing," and turn to my bed. My mom is sitting there, and I lay down next to her. She places her hand underneath me to feel my heart, and I hear her say, "His heart is about to beat out of his chest." I get scared, and my final words utter, "Moonflower." They took moonflower. They ask in confusion what moonflower is, and I point to my TV. I raise my hand and yell, "Moonflower," as I point at the pods on my TV. Yes, that was my last memory. Suddenly I wake up and my mom is holding me. I'm sitting on the couch in the office and I see a figure charging toward me. I start batting it with my hands while screaming, but my mom holds me down and says, "Alex, it's just a hallucination. Settle down." I fall back to and look at my arm. There's a bandage over my veins near my elbow and a hospital.
Still.
I ask what's going on, and my mom tells me I've been in the hospital for the last 24 hours. Apparently, they rushed me to the hospital after I passed out on my bed, and I went crazy when I got there. I was punching the nurses and swearing at everyone, so they had to restrain me in my hospital bed.
Hey, what you, nigga? What you talking about? Nigga, up out of here, nigga. You're not connecting nobody else.
My entire family really was in my room, because apparently at some point I walked into the room my sister was sleeping in and mumbled some gibberish, so she went to my parents and woke them up, which woke everyone else up. They all wanted to see what was going on. To this day, I honestly think I was starting to cross over to the spirit world and I was looking at actual spirits. Maybe they were looking over me. If I had fallen into the pool, I would have unquestionably drowned. If I had walked over the edge of the yard, I would have fallen to my death. The fact I didn't kill myself that night is a total miracle. Moonflower, or Jimson weed, or whatever, is a terrible weed. I will stay away from it like the plague. I literally had no control over my body once it kicked in. I could have murdered my entire family and I would never remember it. There isn't enough money in the world to make me want to try it ever again. When I decided to take this drug, I was in a state where I'd do anything to get high. Although the experience itself wasn't too bad, after doing research on how dangerous this drug is, I don't ever want to do it again. My mom also looked after someone in intensive care who developed a psychosis after using Datura. It started at my mate's house. I made up a
I
tea
bet
solution with
your
1.5
dreadlocks
flowers
on
and let
that
it stay
nigga.
overnight. When I woke up, I found the tea.
Come on, chat. We gotta cut this nigga
The
dreads
first effects I
tonight.
noticed was a dry throat and mouth. So dry I couldn't even swallow saliva or drink water. It felt disgusting. I started to feel nauseous and ended up throwing my guts up. Once I'd thrown up, I felt better, but strange. I decided to lie down, and as soon as I closed my eyes, I experienced some strange CEVs. They weren't seen with my eyes, but vividly in my mind, like
He's
if someone was to
forcing me to
visualize
do
an
it.
object. The difference was I had no control over what I visualized, so it was like I watched a movie played out in my head. I saw some awe-striking things with lots of detail and color. As I was lying on the bed, one of my mates started talking to me. I replied, and we had a short conversation until I opened my eyes and noticed he was at the other end of the room. Everyone was staring at me because I'd been talking to myself. I shouted, "How'd you get over there so fast? Wasn't I just talking to you here?" And he said no, as they all laughed. I found it quite amusing and started laughing too. This continued to happen as I closed my eyes again. It was like I'd fall into conversing with them, without realizing it. I do it unconsciously, forgetting it was fake and it happened previously. As soon as I opened my eyes and realized that no one was there, I realized I was talking to myself again. Very strange. I felt much better now. The dryness of throat and mouth had disappeared, and I no longer suffered from any nausea, so I decided to walk into town with some maids. I don't remember much until we got into town. I decided to catch a bus home. I jumped on the bus, got our tickets, and sat down. I thought two other mates were sitting in the back because I was down in the front, so I shouted out to them as they shouted back. I later found out that my friends were not in the bus, and I was just embarrassing myself. The bus drove on its route until it reached my street. The driver drove right past my street, and I shouted, "No, turn right! You missed my house!" Expecting the driver to deliver me to my house. I realized I had to get off my stop. I wondered why I shouted at her. I got off at the next closest stop and began my walk home. I have no idea why I decided to go home while it's on Datura. Dumb idea. On my walk, I was alone, but I kept having conversations with my friends in the same way I had conversations in the bed. I'd be walking, and I'd hear someone talk to me and reply to them. Then, as I turned to look towards the voice, I'd see them for a split second until they vanished into thin air. I believed I was with around 4 or 5 people when I was alone the whole walk. I decided that all my friends had invisibility cloaks, and they were playing tricks on me. Every time I looked at them as they disappeared, I got really mad because they wouldn't stay visible, and I shouted and cursed at them. At one point, I was trying to pull trees out of the ground, believing they were hiding underground. I also searched through people's gardens, looking for where my friends had gone. I passed quite a few people while undertaking these strange acts, and got very strange looks from people. I ignored them, thinking my actions were perfectly normal. On the walk home, I continuously found a cigarette in my hand to light, and I put it in my mouth to take a drag, but not feel any smoke in my lungs. I looked at my hand and noticed that the cigarette had disappeared. I also felt and heard my phone vibrate and ring in my pocket. I pulled it out, answered it, and started talking to someone on the phone, and I noticed it went silent. I looked at my hand and realized that the phone was gone. This kept happening quite a few times, and no matter how many times it happened, I was unable to realize it was a hallucination until after it had disappeared. Once I reached home, my mother opened the door. I introduced my friends, asking if they could come in for a bit. I ran into the kitchen and told my invisible friends to make themselves at home, and asked if they were hungry or thirsty, all while my mom watched in disbelief. I remember my mom asking where my friends had gone, and I looked around noticing they had disappeared. I told her they were probably wearing invisibility cloaks or hiding in the bushes outside. She sat me down and asked what drugs I had taken. Not realizing how fucked I was, I lied and said none. She ended up telling me she called an ambulance, thinking I'd gone insane, which caused me to run away as fast as I could from her house. I ended up walking back into town, just talking to my invisible friends as I walked through the main street. I decided to start walking back to my friend's house, thinking I was with 2 other people the entire time, and I was furious as they kept disappearing on me. I reached my friend's house, and by then, the drug had worn off.
He's
I
gonna
kept
be
asking my friends if they had been with me at all today, and they said no.
just
They'd
like
been at
last
home.
night.
Dude, I realized I'd been delusional on Datura all day, and told my friends as they laughed at my strange conclusions and experiences. Datura was very strange and very confusing. Whilst on the drug, you don't know what's real and what's not, and it puts you in a dreamlike state where you can accept very delusional beliefs. Although the experience wasn't frightening, it was very confusing and frustrating. I don't plan on doing it again. I should probably write this all down before I forget, as a lot of it has already left my mind. I've always been interested in valerians. I already have experience with nutmeg and DPH, but Datura is what has really piqued my interest. I brought this up to a friend of mine who says he knows where some of those plants are grown. I told him, give us some leaves to smoke and test the waters. Next time, we are going to harvest the seeds and use those to hopefully go further. At 12 o'clock, I find my friend B 3, walk down the street into a nearby forest with a leafy harvested and a pipe. We also got cigarettes in case we need to take a reach around. 12:30. He's already smoked his nose. He doesn't say anything right then. It doesn't taste as bad as it smells. I put a pipe to my lips. Neat. I waited until the plant was really wet, and then I took a slow and deep drag. He was right. The taste was very faint. However, it was starting to burn, so I popped the smoke out. As soon as I do this, I feel like I just shrunk down by 3 feet. He says, "God damn, I feel high already." Me too, I reply, as we start getting back to meet with another sober friend, C. 12:45. On the walk back, I start to feel like I'm being grabbed and pulled down, but at the same time, very light on my feet. He won't shut up and keeps bursting into laughter. I start hearing a faint hum in the background, and I have this horrible feeling of being watched or followed, so I take a cigarette and struggle to light it in the rain. I finally get the cigarette lit right as we near C. Another friend of mine drives by, stops by sidewalk to say hi. We look for the couple who was again smoking, and I had no idea I even had a cigarette in my mouth. I didn't realize it until V called me out for it. I take a long drag from the cig. Sweet nicotine. I can feel the anxiety melt away with every hit. We finally meet up with C, who immediately notices something and asks, "What the fuck are you guys on?" We try to explain to him what Datura is, and he replies, "So you smoked a random plant out of the ground?" And as it rains even more than my vision starts to fall. 15. The slightest noise will cause me to jump. Not the intensity of DPH, but still enough to be an inconvenience. I see people walking on the other side of the road who aren't actually there, and dogs running into the middle of the road, only to get hit by a car and vanish into thin air. I'm not walking. The ground under my feet dissolves, and it feels like I'm walking on stilts, off the cliff into the ground. Sometimes I do just that, and realize that my feet aren't touching anything, and I have no legs. The ground is up to my waist. I can't tell noise is real from fake anymore. The high itself is very comforting, though, so I try to enjoy the euphoria and not get distracted by the illusions. C tries to light a cigarette, but can't because of the rain. 30. We stop at a table just outside of Sunrise to eat. I look at myself in the reflection of the window. It stares back at me. I'm a bitch. I insult it back. Then I feel this sense of danger and apologize before it attacks me. C says I'm fucked. He just feels tired at this point, and I can't recognize anyone, including myself in my own camp. Everything just looks on. I try to listen to music, but I keep hearing fast footsteps as if someone's charging at me, so I take my earbuds out immediately. C leaves. 2 o'clock. He is perfectly sober at this point. I think he had the same amount as me, but I don't know. I do have a very low tolerance to deliriums. With DPH, I only need 200 milligrams to give me full-blown hallucinations. I decide to take the city bus back to my house and say goodbye to B. The bus ride is a blur. It feels like I walked through the bus straight into my front door. It felt completely natural at the time, however. Looking back, I'm very lucky I actually got to my house. 3 o'clock. I was coming down. I was wrong. I pulled over yet another friend. I text the group chat I'm in asking if I smell like cigarettes, thinking they could answer me. I am truly tired at this point. I look over on my wall and I see something crawling on it. Spiders. Too blackout. 6 o'clock. I'm not in my room anymore. I'm in a restaurant with B eating fish and chips. The room looks very small and it's closing in on me. Everything looks very off, like a vision on high-dose edibles, but more sinister. I think we had a conversation about murder. More blackout. 7 o'clock. I'm back in my room. Computers galore. I feel like a Pablo Picasso painting with all my limbs having improper proportions, and I have like an undersized hitbox to get what I'm trying to describe. Nightmare number 3. 8 o'clock. I'm in a car with my mother, possibly brother. I can't tell who's talking. Me, her, and the other peculiar man in the back seat. I try my best not to audibly answer anything. He says not to raise any suspicion that I'm drunk. It's very difficult. On the ride to wherever we were going, I kept seeing people walking across the street, and I looked back greenish. Very tall figures with no trees in the distance. The man in the back seat, Johnny below me. 9 o'clock. I remember watching TV. I remember the show. There are bugs all over the walls. The man in the corner won't stop staring at me. I'm hearing whispers from the kitchen. 11 o'clock. I try to sleep. I can't relax over the breathing coming from the foot of my bed. I can feel its breath. Itching. Lots of itching. I can't sleep. Dying. I've died multiple times already, but I'm going to die again. I hope this is the last time. I look outside. It's daytime. There's a girl talking to me. She looks dead. She tells me I'm next. I snap out of it. I look in my room. She's standing in front of me. Huge bugs everywhere. None of this seems to bother me anymore. I have multiple more strange occurrences like this. 5 o'clock. I think I finally go to sleep. Vivid nightmares. Not scary ones. Just disturbing. They don't bother me. Day 2. 11 o'clock. I feel exhausted. Still seeing spiders and shadow people. 8 o'clock. Visuals subside. Memories seem very hazy. Other hallucinations continue. I'm actually able to sleep. Day 3, 10 o'clock. I think I sobered up around this point. Vision's still blurry, mild tinnitus, but other than that, I'm back to normal. And yeah, that's it. I actually found this really fun, despite what it may have sounded like. I do like horror, and seem to have a strange liking to disturbing things, so that may be a part of it. Hopefully next time I can go deeper, fully dive into this other world. TLDR. First experience with Datura. Pretty enjoyable but disorienting and disturbing. Hard to tell you're even tripping until you have